Hi everybody, I am super excited right now. Let me get straight. Okay, so super excited right now because a couple days ago I finished all of my books for January. So it was very exciting, very gratifying to finish all of the books that I had set to read. I think I had planned to read, 8 books in January, so it's been very exhausting. I'm glad that I finished early so I can take a little bit of a break before jumping into February. But I wanted to take this moment to just sort of give a little bit of a synopsis / review thing of all the books that I read for the month of January. So I'm going to start with the physical books that I read. The first book that I finished reading, because that was kind of my theme for January, was books that I had started and needed to finish. So the first book that I finished reading was The Historian by Elizabeth Kostova. This was really, really good. I'm really glad that I got the chance to finish it. The storyline, basically it's a Dracula story. So, but it's Dracula from a kind of a more historical perspective than the whole Bram Stoker thing. Although Bram Stoker's Dracula, of course, is mentioned in this book. It's a frame story, a story within a story. There is the unnamed narrator who is telling her story as well as her father's story as it directly impacts her. So I really liked it. The ending I thought was really good. I finished reading this in the dead of night, like you do, and I got to the ending and I was like, oh my god! And I very nearly just threw the book across the room. I was so excited. So I would definitely say I'd give The Historian, I would say 4 out of 5 stars. And the reason I'm saying 4 out of 5 instead of 5 out of 5 is because I had read through pretty much the half of the book before I picked it up again for January. So I didn't get the full experience for The Historian. I'm sorry to say I did not get the full experience. I lost some of the magic. But it was amazing nonetheless. Now I will say that this book does get bogged down a lot in kind of historical documents. So if that's something that you kind of aren't such a huge fan of, then maybe this book isn't for you. It is very wordy, and it does kind of drag in some places, but the atmosphere cannot be beat. It is a really, really great book, so I highly recommend it. 4 out of 5 stars. Then the next book that I finished reading was The Shadow of the Wind by Carlos Ruiz Zafón, and here it is. I said in my first video for January that I started this sort of in September, October of last year, and I had wanted to finish it and I just didn't. I loved it. This is another kind of a wordy book, but I would say that's more to do with the fact that it was originally written in Spanish, and then there was so this is a translation. So it is a little bit wordy, but I loved it. Again, a hugely atmospheric novel. It's set in Barcelona in the 1940s and 50s. And it tells the story of a young boy named Daniel who finds a book by this author, Carax is the author's name. And you find out through a series of events that someone has been systematically finding and destroying all of Carax's books, so that The Shadow of the Wind is really kind of the only one that's left standing, so to speak. Daniel finds it in a place called the Cemetery of Forgotten Books, and you find out how Carax's book ended up there, and you find out all these different things about Julian Carax. And it's just a really great novel about post-World War II Spain, Barcelona especially, what the country was going through during the Spanish Civil War, mostly, not necessarily World War II. And just it's also kind of a novel of character development. It's kind of a Bildungsroman. So a coming-of-age novel. Sorry, I had to go on that journey with you guys. This is kind of a coming-of-age novel because at the beginning of the book, Daniel is about 10, and at the end, he's 18. So I really enjoyed it. Very atmospheric, definitely 5 out of 5 stars. I cannot wait to read the next book in the Cemetery of Forgotten Books series. So then after The Name of the Wind, I read, and I have a video review of it, I read The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. I loved this book. I absolutely love this book. This is another frame story. And the frame of it is told in the third person. And the actual story itself within the frame, the story within the story, is told in the first person. This is the story of a man named Quote, who you come to find out is something of a legend in his own time. And a man named the Chronicler finds Quote where he's hiding out and says, you need to tell your story. And so Quote does. And I didn't really catch on to this till about halfway through the book, but the series is called the Kingkiller Chronicles, and this one is day 1. And around the middle of the book, it clicked with me that at the very beginning of the book, Quote says to the Chronicler, it's going to take 3 days to tell my story. And as I'm reading it, I'm like, wait, whoa, so what? So this is the first day of Quote telling his story, and the next book that has come out, it came out in 2012, it's called Wise Man's Fear. That is day 2 of telling the story. So I cannot read, due to my New Year's resolution, I cannot read Wise Man's Fear until next year. And I'm kind of okay with it because I really don't know if I want to finish Wise Man's Fear and then have to just sort of hope and pray and wait for the next book to come out. But anyway, very, very excited about this book, very excited about this series. 5 out of 5 stars. Loved it, loved it, loved it. It has its own review. Go watch it. It's amazing. So then, as soon as I finished, well, not as soon as once I finished The Name of the Wind, I started in on the Book of Lost Things by John Connolly. And this is a book that I thought was going to be a lot longer than it actually is. As you can see, it looks like it's about 500 pages. But when you actually look at it, a good chunk of this book is kind of extra stuff. There's a conversation with the author, and then there's some... because this book relies heavily on fairy tales. So then this much of the book is kind of extra features. But this part is the actual novel itself. The actual novel itself is only about 370 pages. So that was super easy to read. I was really worried at first when I saw this, but the length of it, I was like, I don't know, I'm not going to get this done. But I actually read it in 2 days. It's a really quick, easy read. The character, David, is really relatable. I had a little bit of trouble getting through the very, very beginning of this book just because I felt so much for David. At the beginning of the book, his mother dies, and I think you're supposed to think that it's from cancer. And it's just during World War II, just at the beginning of World War II. And so David was very close to his mother. They had a very close relationship. She would read to him, they would read together, all kinds of things like that. And then when his mother dies, David is left alone with his father. And then his father remarries this woman named Rose, and they go to live in Rose's family home in the northern suburbs of London. And of course, David isn't happy about this because Rose is not his mother, and by the time they move into the house, David has a baby brother, Georgie. And he doesn't want Georgie to be around because Georgie is not his mother and father's child. So because he has a lot of resentment towards Rose and Georgie, he ends up in this alternate world. And that's what the Book of Lost Things is about. It's about David getting sucked into this alternate world and trying to find the king who can supposedly help him. I really enjoyed this book. I cried and cried at the end. It's kind of a weird combination of the Chronicles of Narnia and What Dreams May Come. It's like John Connolly was able to remember as an adult with adult emotions and memories what happened as a child. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it really is. It's like when he writes as David, when he's writing David's feelings, he really seems to be in touch with his self as a child. But when he describes certain events, it's a very adult description. That's what I'm trying to say. So I really enjoyed this book. It is very touching. It's very quick to get through, so I would definitely recommend it as like a weekend read, or I don't know if I would do a beach read, but it moves pretty quickly, and it has some really interesting source material in the back that you might want to look through if you're interested in the origins of fairy tales. So I would definitely say like 4 out of 5 stars for this book. So now we go into the ebooks that I read for January. And okay, sorry about that. So, the ebooks that I read for January, the very first book that I finished reading for January for 2014 was Shadow Dance by Kristen Callahan. Oh, look at it switching around. It's Shadow Dance by Kristen Callahan. Now, this is the 4th book in a series, so obviously I don't want to say too much because spoilers. But basically, this tells the story of 2 characters, Jack Talent and Mary Chase, and I would have to say that they get up to shenanigans, and of course everything turns out alright in the end, and it is by far probably my favorite book in the series. The first one always holds a special place in your heart, but this one would have to be my favorite in the series so far. So like I said, I can't say a whole lot about that because spoilers, and I will not spoil books for you. So then the next book that I read as far as ebooks was The Bookman by Lavie Tidhar. The Bookman. Anyway. I was interested in it because it was sort of described as like a steampunk kind of a novel, and I'm trying to get into the steampunk genre. I think it's a lot of fun, especially steampunk novels that are not popular romances, because that's what a couple of these series that I'm reading, that's what they are. So I was really confused by The Bookman, because while it is kind of a steampunk, there are, dirigibles and steam locomotion and technology before its time and all of that. It's also told in a version of the world where lizards are the monarchs of England, I should say. And that kind of messed with my head a little bit. Yes, lizards, like with the tongue, lizards. And so that was different and weird. I just don't know how I felt about it. So because obviously I'm having trouble with words with this novel, I got to the end and I was really confused. Everything turns out all right, thankfully, after everything that this guy went through, but I was still just really confused by it. Like, what was the point? What was the plot? Who are these people? 2 out of 5 stars. I do have another book by Lavie Tidhar, Camera Obscura, that I'm reading for February, mostly because it's the next book in the series, and this is the year where I read books in my possession. But if I hadn't bought Camera Obscura on accident, thinking it was the first book in the series, then I wouldn't go and buy Camera Obscura. But there you have it. So, The Bookman, 2 out of 5 stars. After The Bookman, there was Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, which Ransom Riggs just came out with the 2nd book in the series. So this is crazy. This author is insanely popular all over YouTube and BookTube and so on and so forth. This is another book that I had started reading ages and ages ago, got to like most of the way through it, and then stopped for whatever reason. Basically, the main character, his grandfather dies, and the main character witnesses his death, and everyone thinks he's crazy, and so he and his dad go on a trip to sort of prove that he made it all up because his grandfather's death was so traumatic. And you come to find out that everything his grandfather told him was true. And the thing that I love most about this book, though, is that throughout it all, you have these really amazing black and white pictures. And so you have these really amazing black and white pictures throughout the novel. And but they all play into the storyline, which I thought was really, really awesome. Like, if I was a writing teacher, then I would absolutely use this as as a tool for teaching students how to write, because I think that when you have a picture like that, it's easy to just make up something sorry, I feel like my hands look weird. Do my hands look weird? Okay, that was random. Yeah, but I feel like it is hard for young writers to come up with inspiration, but a picture is sometimes worth 1,000 words. So I thought that was really great. Finally, a book that I read, another book that I had started reading and then didn't get a chance to finish was Lady Macbeth by Susan Fraser King. And I have to say I was not terribly impressed with this book. I really wanted to be impressed with this book, but I don't know. I mean, I felt like as a character, Lady Macbeth was kind of hollow. I think part of the trouble is that there isn't a whole lot of historical record for her as a person. She was a woman living in the 11th century, so basically her birth and her marriage and her death, that's all that they get. So there is a ton of room to make up her life, which is fine, but I don't think that, I don't know, I mean, I just felt like something was lacking in this particular novel. Let me get to the actual picture of so for some reason when I pulled it up earlier, the cover art was weird, but this is Lady Macbeth's cover art right here. Let me see if I can get it to focus. Hold on. And yeah, I was reading the book, and as I'm reading it, I'm sometimes just looking at the page, oh, nothing interesting, and I'm able to follow the story without actually having to read every word, and I'm like, that shouldn't be. I mean, to really enjoy a book for me, I have to be completely immersed in it, and I wasn't. So for that, I would say I would give 3 out of 5 stars to Lady Macbeth by Susan Fraser King, and this is the artwork that Kindle's pulling up right now for some reason. I mean, it was interesting as far as a lot of times in the novel they're moving from one place to another, and so that's kind of neat, but the descriptions of the household are kind of neat, but other than that, I wasn't really impressed with her as a character. I don't have a whole lot to say about the book. So anyway, those are the books that I finished for January. This was a little bit of a longer video, so thank you for sticking with me through it. I really am looking forward to the books I'm reading for February. Obviously there will be some sort of love theme because it is, the month of love, whatever, Valentine's Day. And I'll see you guys later. I have a couple of mini-series reviews that I'm going to film real fast, and I will see you guys later. Bye.